All right, let's start going through these warm-ups. The first one should have been quick and easy if we remembered point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. They gave us a point and a slope, so we just have to plug in y1, m, and x1. Who can tell me what it would look like when we plug those in? Annabelle?
Y minus 5 equals -1. And then 3 minus x.
Other way around. It'd be the x has to come first, then the minus 3. So y minus 5 equals -1 parentheses x minus 3.
Distribute.
Nope.
Oh.
We are not going to distribute on that one because they wanted point slope form. That's what they wanted. We leave it there. Yes, ma'am. What? Nope. We don't do anything else. They said point slope form.
Oh, like that.
So this is point slope
So
form.
that's the answer.
So this is our answer.
So what if they ask for the slope-intercept form?
Slope intercept form, then yes, we would move on to multiplying.
Okay, so like number 3.
Yes, 3 would be one where we would end up multiplying.
Okay.
Other questions about number 1?
What is this? Where's
Hmm?
the one that,
You gotta get your notes.
look, I know, but do we write the instructions?
Yeah, we're doing all 3 warm-ups. If you need more space, you can get your own paper or flip to the back. If there's a box that's not enough room for you, find other space.
Miss Barry, can I put my phone on the wall?
Make it quick, please. Number 2, write a linear function with f of 2 equals -2 and f of 1 equals 1. We have to know that this represents 2 what?
Y equals.
Nope. These represent 2 different what?
Problems. Points.
Points. 2 different points. What points do these represent?
Oh, 0. No. Let me look at my notes.
What do you think, Austin?
X and Y intercepts.
These are not intercepts because they don't have any zeros in there. How would I use these to write them as
Wait,
points?
we don't have these in our notes.
We did some of these yesterday.
Oh, F X equals oh, the little subtract. No idea. Subtract.
Nope. All I need to know is what goes in these points.
0.
2 and -2.
2 -2 is one of them.
Oh, like that, and then
Yeah.
1 and 1.
Well, other one is 1, 1. Questions about how we get points from function notation?
Because I just guessed.
You have to identify the x that they plugged in. So if they replaced x with a 2, we replace x with a 2. The output from that was -2. Output is our y's. So the y is -2. We have to use those points to first find what? First step is always to find slope. Okay? What is going in the numerator to find our slope? -2 minus,
-2.
nope.
No. 1.
The other y value is a 1. What's going in the denominator?
1. I mean, 2.
2 minus 1. -2 minus 1.
1. Oh, -3.
-3 over
1.
1.
3. Right.
Well, -3. Okay, negative divided by a positive is a negative. After we find our slope, we have to pick a point. I'm going to take away what's down here for just a minute. We have our slope. We need to pick a point and put it in point slope form. This is what we were doing yesterday. Which point do you want to use?
72.
We're still on number 2.
Oh. 2 and 1. I mean, 2 and 2.
To a -2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to use that point to put it into point slope form. What will that look like?
2 over 2.
I still have point slope written at the top if we need help with it.
Oh, y.
Y plus 2
Equals?
equals -3 2x minus 2.
Good.
Okay, I got a question.
What's your question?
Okay, how did you get the -3 and the -2?
-3 was our slope. That's m. We just calculated it.
Mm-hmm.
This -2?
Yeah.
So the formula always says is subtract x1.
Uh-huh.
So we subtracted 2.
Wait,
minus 2.
so is the 2 supposed to be the y2? The 2, right there. It's supposed to be y2. The 2 right there. The 2 right there.
This -2?
No, the 2 up there.
This is an x.
So, but that says y minus y, and this says y plus 2. Is that a y?
The formula always says subtract a y. This is a y. It is negative. When you subtract a negative, it makes it positive. Anything else on that step? Janaya?
I'm not understanding it all.
Get yesterday's notes out. We did this yesterday.
I know, but yesterday I said what?
Jasha,
What?
silent.
I didn't skip. I was yesterday.
I didn't say skill.
I wasn't saying.
Step 3 was 2.
Slope intercept.
We're working towards slope intercept form. How are we going to get it there?
Wait. Let me go to my stuff.
Y equals mx plus b.
Distribute.
We're headed there. We need to distribute to make that happen. We distribute the -3. We get y plus 2 equals what?
-3x plus 6.
-3x plus 6.
Okay, how did you? Oh, never mind. I sound.
AirPods out before we come in.
No.
After that, what would we do?
We will do slope intercept for him.
How?
We will get your y alone.
By
Subtract our 2.
subtracting 2 on both sides. Y equals -3x plus 4.
Okay, how did you give? Oh, never mind.
Wait, how did you get that?
Which part?
I'm confused.
Okay, Miss Berry.
So we are going to move on to our objective. There we are. Today we're doing section 4.3, writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Our steps are not going to be a whole lot different from what we've done, especially what we did yesterday. It's going to be extremely similar. The only difference is that we're introducing these ideas of parallel and perpendicular. All right, let's get into our notes. 2 lines in the same plane that never intersect are parallel lines. Ooh, sorry. They are parallel lines if they never intersect in the same plane. 2 distinct non-vertical lines are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. The exact same slope. Okay, it says that all vertical lines are parallel. That should make sense. If they're all vertical, they go straight up and down. Their slopes are undefined, which technically means they are the same. So all vertical lines are parallel to each other. All horizontal lines would also be parallel to each other. Okay, if you want to draw a picture to go in there, you would just draw 2 lines that would not touch each other. And even if they continue on, they should still not touch each other. Okay, so what I mean by that, something that is not parallel would be lines like this.
They will go through.
Okay, Even though these lines don't touch each other right now, we can see that if we keep extending this one, eventually they would. So these are not parallel. For lines to be parallel, they can never, ever, ever touch. Questions about them? Dominic?
Will that be the explanation part when we do those questions come homework time?
It's possible. If it asks about it, you could say that they have the same slope. That's how we know for sure they're parallel. Because sometimes they will look like they don't touch, but we have to check their points to see if they have the same slope. All right. So let's decide which of the lines are parallel. They gave us 3 lines. They named them with little letters, A, B, and C.
A and B.
Well, we don't know until we find their slopes. We have to know for sure. They look like maybe they could be parallel. Maybe none of them truly are parallel. They would have to have the exact same slope in order to be parallel. So let's start with line A. So we're going to find the slope, and I'm just going to put a little a next to my M so I know I'm finding the slope of line A. Finding slope, we've done it before many times.
Y2 minus Y1.
Y2 minus Y1. So in my numerator, what am I putting? 2 minus 3. And my denominator should be my x's. 1 minus negative 4. Subtracting a negative means I'm really adding.
Negative 1 over 6. 5.
Good. So the slope of that first one is negative 1 over 5. Janiyah? They labeled them in our diagram. They labeled the points. They're labeled for us. We use the points they gave us to find our slope.
Now you use the slope.
Okay, we're just going to let that sit there for a minute because we still need to find 2 more slopes. For line B, what is our numerator going to look like?
0.
Negative 1 minus 0. My denominator? 1 plus 3. Slope in my
Negative 1.
negative 1 over.
4.
So are lines A and B parallel?
No.
No, lines A and B are not, but we still need to check which one.
C.
Line C. So for my slope of line C, negative 5 plus 4 over 2 plus 3. What do I get?
1 over 5.
Negative 1 over 5.
M and C. A and C.
Good. Lines A and C are parallel. So that's what our answer would be. This is all of our work.
Do you have to do
A is parallel to C.
step 3 and step 4 when you're doing this? Like when you're trying to find a parallel, you have to do step 3 and step 4.
There will be some problems where we will go through all 4 of those steps. This one is not one of them. We're not actually writing equations this time. Janiyah.
So you use all the y-intercepts for the problem?
We use all the points. We're not given any y-intercepts. If you have questions about how to calculate slope, we'll have to go back to our chapter 3 notes. That's something that we could talk about before or after school, during tutoring. But we can't review all of how to find slope right now. We've done a lot of them. We've got the same formula that should be in your notes. You can write it down again. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. We're given 2 points. We find the slope the same way. Example 2. Write an equation of a line that passes through 3, 1 and is parallel to the line that's given. So we've got 2 different problems here. We'll do problem A first, and then I'll bring back problem B. These problems are going to be extraordinarily similar to what we did yesterday. Okay, yesterday you had to calculate your slope. Today you're going to identify your slope. So, what is the slope of this line?
3 over 1.
3 over 1 or just 3? Are we all okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was what the M was. If we want a line that is parallel to it, we want to use the same exact slope. So they gave us our slope. We don't have to calculate it. What point did they give us to use?
1. No.
Look in the directions.
1.
3, 1.
3, 1 is the point they gave us. So we don't care about the 1 that they put back here at all. We don't use that, and we never will on these types of problems. They gave us a slope. They gave us a point. What form can we put it in? Eventually, we want it in slope-intercept. Which form do we use first?
We already found the slope.
We already found the slope. What's step 2?
Use the slope and 1
Write the equation in
point slope.
point-slope form. So they basically did step 1 for us. They gave us a slope right away. We don't have to do step 1. We can move on to step 2. We have questions about that. Okay, this is how this is really similar to yesterday. So remember, point-slope form. I'll just write them at the top. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Slope-intercept, which is what we want our final answer in, is going to be y equals what? Mx plus b.
Okay, how would you find the other points for
We don't need any other points, right? The only time we ever used both points was when we were finding the slope, but we already have. We already have the slope. We don't need 2 points. We only need 1 point to go to point slope form. Hold on. Janaya.
Wait, so is it like, basically, like, you have to memorize these?
Yes, you should have point slope and slope intercept memorized. You should also be memorizing these 4 steps. We've done them in enough. We should have them memorized by now. All right, so let's work on putting it in point slope form. Y minus
3.
1, use your y coordinate, equals
3.
parentheses
X
minus 3.
x minus 3. We put it in point slope form. We just plugged our stuff into point slope. Now we have to do step 3, which is,
Distribute.
so y minus 1 equals
3x.
minus
Oh.
9. And then what do we do?
Minus 1.
Add 1.
Get y alone is step 4. We add 1. So now, James, you would be correct. Y equals 3x minus 8.
You still have to keep the 3x.
Yep. 3x has to stay. That's it. So this is extremely similar to yesterday. We just have to identify our slope in a different way.
Can we do
The rest of the steps go the same. Yes, you may try B on your own. You're still using the point 3, 1. Let me see if I can bring B back. There's B. Okay, so on letter B, what are we not going to care about? The 3 on the end. You don't care about that plus 3. You don't need it. What slope does 2b give you?
2.
Okay. So you're going to use your slope of 2, and you're going to use that same point 3, 1 from the directions and do the rest of the steps. All right, let's get it started with point slope form now that we identified our slope that we're parallel to and the point that we're using.
Y minus 2 equals 2.
Hold on, y minus what?
2. I mean 1.
Y minus 1 equals
2.
parentheses
X minus 3.
x minus 3. Questions about point slope?
Distribute.
We have a y coordinate.
We're only at
We've got a y coordinate. We use our y coordinate. So it always goes x comma y. If you want to label these as x1, y1, you can. All we did was take our point slope form, which is right here for us, and we plugged in the y1 from the point, our m that we identified, and the x1 from our point. That's all we did here. Plug in 3 numbers. After we plug in those 3 numbers, then we have to distribute. Y minus 1 equals? Good. Last step.
Add 1.
Get y alone by adding 1.
Y equals 2x minus 5.
Good. Y equals 2x minus 5. You can always check yourself by plugging in that point, 3 comma 1, and making sure it works out. 2 times 3 is 6 minus 5 is 1. So we plugged a 3 in, we got a 1 out. That's what we wanted. Questions about example 2? Okay. Line A passes through negative 5, 3 and negative 6, 1. Line B passes through 3, negative 2, 2, negative 7. Are these lines parallel? Explain.
You don't know.
We don't know yet. What do we need to find for both of them?
Slope.
Slope. And what would we expect to find if they are parallel?
They have the same
Same slope. So if they have the same slope, they're parallel. If they don't have the same slope, they are not parallel. Okay? So I'm going to let you find your slopes. I will write the slope formula up here. You need to find both slopes for line A and for line B. So I'll underline A's points in purple, B's points in red, if that helps. Don't mix and match your points. You gotta find the slope of both of those lines, see if they are the same or not. In order to find the slope of line A, what did we plug into our numerator? Negative 1 minus 3 over?
Negative 6 plus 5.
Negative 6 plus 5. In our numerator we got negative over negative equals a positive. You could write it as 4 or 4 over 1. Doesn't matter to me. For line B, what goes in my numerator? Denominator? Okay, what do I get in my numerator? Negative 5 over negative 1, which reduces to?
5.
So, are these parallel?
No. What I say?
They are not parallel because they don't have the same slope. So, not parallel. You could say different slopes, not the same slope. You could put slope of A does not equal slope of B. Doesn't matter to me how you write it, but you got to communicate something to me. We are on perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines are a little more challenging than parallel lines. Perpendicular lines are 2 lines in the same plane that intersect to form right angles. All right. Perpendicular lines touch each other to form a right angle. Why?
Wait, miss.
Okay. A right angle has a measure of 90 degrees. We will talk more about that in geometry. But these would be perpendicular lines. They touch each other. They form what's called a right angle. It's usually identified by a little box. That's one way of knowing it's 90 degrees. Or they could tell you it's a 90-degree angle. So it's a little preview into some geometry for you. Okay, they are perpendicular if their slopes are negative reciprocals. The example they give is positive 1 over 4 and negative 4, because the negative 4 would be over what?
1.
A 1. So they change the sign and they flip the fraction. If you want to write it that way, you can. The negative reciprocal means change sign, flip fraction. So it's not going to be the exact same number. We have to remember to change the sign and flip the fraction. All right, questions about perpendicular lines? Change sign, flip fraction. Other than that, the rest of these problems will be like what we were doing before. So let's try to identify if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. It's possible to be neither. So let's start off. In order to decide this, what do we need to know about each of these
The
lines?
slope.
The slope. What's the slope of the first line?
3. Yeah,
2/3. The last two, they have not set up for us to know the slope right away. They put it in standard form. We want to change it so that what letter is alone?
Y.
We want y to be alone. So for line B, I'm going to do that over here. 3x plus 2y equals 8. What would be my first step, bless you, to get y alone? Not yet. First step.
Subtract 3.
Subtract 3x. That leaves me with 2y equals what?
3. Negative 3.
Negative 3x plus
8.
8. Then we would
Divide.
divide all of them by 2. Y equals negative 3 halves x plus 4. Okay, so I keep the 2, the denominator 2, just with the 3. What's the slope of that line? Negative 3 over 2. Questions about that slope? Okay, let's find the slope of the last line. We need to get y alone again. First step to do that is...
No.
Yep. We want y to be alone, so we need to get rid of the 2x by adding it.
3y
Equals what?
2x minus 9.
Good. Last step to get y alone.
Add. No. Divided by.
Divide by 3. So we have y equals 2/3 x minus 3. So the slope of that line is 2/3.
Wait, aren't you supposed to divide by?
Okay. All right. So which lines are parallel?
A.
Okay. A and C are parallel. Which ones are perpendicular?
B.
A and
B.
B or
A and C. I mean B and C.
B and C.
I don't.
Okay, so A and C are parallel to each other. A is perpendicular to B, and B is perpendicular to C. We knew that because we looked at their slopes. The ones that are exactly the same come from parallel lines. The ones that are opposite reciprocals are perpendicular lines, which means we changed the sign and flipped the fraction. Questions on this one? Okay. Go ahead and try the next one on your own. Remember to identify all of your slopes before you start making decisions.
How you doing?
I'm going to start talking about these. I know you still might be finishing off some of your slopes. First one, slope's easy to identify. It's 4, or we could write it as 4 over 1. The next one, we had to get y alone. So we subtract x on both sides and then divide everything by 4. Now you might have heard me telling somebody that we have to remember what number sits in front of that x. What is it? A 1. So I treat that like a negative 1 over 4. Negative 1/4 x. The 3/4 we don't really care about, but it is there. So what is the slope of line B? Negative 1/4. All right, line C, we still had to get y alone. So I added 2x on both sides and then divided by negative 8. Okay, we get 2 over negative 8. That reduces to negative 1/4. So our slope is? Negative 1/4. Which ones are parallel?
B and C.
B and C are parallel. Which ones are perpendicular?
A and B and A and B.
Okay, A and B,
A and C.
A and C. Questions about identifying parallel and perpendicular lines? Okay, I know some of you might still need a little more time on that problem, but we're going to move on to the next one because we got to get through at least this next example. We are going to write the equation of a line that passes through this point and is perpendicular to the line they gave us. Thank you. All right. What is the slope of the line that they gave us?
4x.
So the slope is
4
4 over 1. Is that the slope we want to use?
Yes.
If
No.
we want to be perpendicular?
Oh, no.
No. What slope do we want to use?
4 and negative 3. These are the points.
Hold on. We're not to the points yet.
Negative
Oh, one. No. Isn't it like
Negative 1 over
4.
4. Okay. They gave us one slope, but they wanted it to be perpendicular. Perpendicular means we have to change the sign, flip the fraction. When we change the sign, it goes from positive to negative. When we flip the fraction, instead of 4 over 1, it becomes 1 over 4. Change the sign, flip the fraction. This is the slope we want to use.
Okay.
Questions about that?
So what we
If you understand that part, the rest of the problem is like what we've been doing. What point did they give us to use?
4 and negative 3.
4, negative 3. So they essentially did step 1 kind of for us. We still had to find the slope. We had to identify it. Now we're on step 2. We've got a point and a slope. We want to put it in point slope form. Y minus 3. Oh, it shouldn't be minus 3 though, because this 3 is negative, right?
Y plus 3.
Okay.
Parentheses x.
Negative 1/4 before the parentheses. X minus 4. Questions about that step? Okay, step 3 is to distribute. Y plus 3 equals negative 1/4 x. A negative times a negative makes it a positive. 1 over 4 times 4 over 1. What's going to happen? 4 over 4 is just 1. So plus 1. Last step. Get y alone by subtracting 3. Y equals negative 1/4 x minus 2. So if you understood what we did yesterday, the only new ideas really that we did today were having to identify a slope from a parallel line and a slope from a perpendicular line. Okay, we are going to save those application style problems for next week. You do not have any application style problems on your take-home quiz.